Alice, I'm going to ask you a couple of standard questions, okay? Have you or any member of your family ever been diagnosed schizophrenic, mentally incompetent?
My uncle thought he was St. Jerome.
I'd call that a big yes. Are you habitually using drugs, stimulants, alcohol?
No.
No, just asking. Are you, Alice, menstruating right now?
What has that got to do with it?
Back off, man.
TC and Jake.
Hey Jake, thanks for welcoming me to Grapevine here. Now that we are here and have this opportunity, would you like to go to the Warhammer store once we're done?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't recall ever seeing it.
It's the jewel of Grapevines downtown, across from the deli that you recommended to me. They have a store. It's a regular storefront. Looked like it maybe. I'm not saying this with any certainty, but just throwing it a guess, could have carried something like school supplies in an earlier bygone day.
Okay.
But now,
how are those stores doing these days?
I mean, I have to think they're doing bad, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta switch over. Maybe something catered to more niche, like fans of the painted figurine-based board game. It's not a board game.
I don't know what you're talking about.
They have a fucking Warhammer store. There's a big Warhammer figurine. It says Warhammer across the top.
What is that? I thought that was like
You've never driven by the thing that says Warhammer?
You know, I guess if I had, I just blocked it out. I thought that was like Thor's weapon.
No, it's got a name.
Something hammer. Army Hammer, I think is what it is.
Yeah, the Army Hammer.
The Army Hammer.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know. Dude, we got a lot of weird stuff down here.
It's, like, it's the kind of thing where, like, if you said, it's like Magic the Gathering, then probably fans of both things would be like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
But it's like Magic the Gathering.
Okay. Yeah, there's
there's certainly differences. It is figurine based. Like I have not yet walked into the Warhammer store. That feels like the kind of COVID risk I don't need to take.
Yeah. You'll risk it not only to get the biscuit, but to get a nice Mark Cuban.
I mean, I have to eat to live.
Right.
I don't have to have Warhammer figurines.
Yeah, it's a weird setup down there with like kitschy sort of. Trinkets and stuff. Like that's a big part, I feel like, of Grapevine's vibrant economy. Mm-hmm. And there's one I pass on the way home that's always been particularly interesting to me on the way home from Dan's. That's it's not called this, but in my head it's called Everything England.
Oh no, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, for that vibrant, like, culinary spot that is England. If you need to stop in and get whatever it is that those people eat.
Meat pies,
yeah, I don't know. It's one of those type of places where they have, like, flags, shirts.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be going.
Yeah, I don't think I will be either. And honestly, I can't believe they're still in business, but shout out to them for still being in business.
So I have a large topic I've been teasing for weeks, possibly months. And I have a lot of notes.
Well, I'm glad, because I feel nude AF over here.
There's no way I'm going to get to all these notes, so let's start now so that I have to leave out the fewest number of them possible. So I'm trying to remember what would have caused me to be interested in the Oklahoma City bombing. Oh, it was the
movie.
No, the Blind Spot, the podcast that was about the
9/11.
Well, it was about 9/11, but they talked extensively about the first attempt to bomb the World Trade Center. And I knew that someone attempted to bomb the World Trade Center. I had an idea that it was a van in the basement. And, I knew it was related to Al-Qaeda. But, I was learning a lot more details about that. Certainly I had the impression that it did not go as intended. It did not zero in on this in the podcast too much, but I found in the Wikipedia that it was the location of the van. I always figured it was just too small and explosive, and they were dummy explosive makers. Turns out, pretty good explosive makers. They just parked the van in the wrong spot. The intended effect of the bombing was to cause one tower to fall into the other, thus leveling both towers with just one bomb in the basement of one of the buildings. And they just didn't park it close enough to the actual foundational elements that they needed to knock out.
It seems like a critical oversight to go through the rest of the logistical prep.
And
then
you got to figure it's
a...
probably the dumbest guy that's like got the park the van job, right? Like it certainly wasn't.
Well, he's expendable.
Ramzi Youssef that was parking the van. Yeah, he's the bomb maker. The guy that rented the van, reported it as stolen, and then attempted to collect his insurance, and then
Little side hustle.
FBI agents were waiting when he attempted that. So that had me interested in crimes of the '90s, and that got me into
Oprah,
Oklahoma City. Where I learned, and I do want to take a little detour for this before we get to the main course. So, Oklahoma City, there was a guy named Ibrahim Ahmad that lived in Oklahoma City, but was from Jordan and was going to visit family. So, bomb goes off around 9, his plane's scheduled for 10. It's got a connection in Chicago and a connection in London. The connection in Chicago, he's pulled off and questioned, I think for like half hour, and then put onto a plane to London. Once he gets to London, for whatever reason, they're like, no, we really got to question him. They pull him off. They hold him for, I guess it's got to be in this notes in front of me, several hours. I want to say it's like 6. They strip searched him in the fucking airport. Like, just, we want to see everything, don't hide anything from us. Not charged with anything. And here's the full dossier of evidence against him. He lived in Oklahoma City, a bomb went off there, and then he flew to the Middle East. That's what they got.
And perhaps after he allegedly had committed this act of terror with a large bomb in Oklahoma City, he then snuck another bomb into his pants or anus.
It feels like more of a power play.
While boarding a plane for an international flight. I don't know that there's a ton of logic behind that.
Probably just seems like, we want to create some frustration. So within hours of Oklahoma City going down, there was multiple instances of cable news being like, we've had a Beirut-style bombing in the downtown Oklahoma City. CNN aired the names, including Ibrahim Ahmad, of 4 different Arab suspects within a couple hours. Like, they're just fucking finding random people. Certainly it's a Muhammad of some kind. I think we all can agree on that. There was in the days after. So, and for everyone who doesn't remember, first of all, of course, it was Timothy McVeigh. And he had an accomplice. I was able to pull up his name on a recent podcast, but I'm probably not going to get it here.
Quiet.
And McVeigh got pulled over, just for regular shit, within an hour. He was in police custody. It might not have been an hour. It was certainly that day that, he just was driving too fast and changed lanes. And they were like, why you got all this in the car?
Really?
Yeah.
That doesn't square with me that somebody that would be able to pull that off would then also be that cavalier in the aftermath.
I know what you mean, but there's a certain kind of guy that knows a lot about bombs, but knows fucking nothing about just living life in a non-dumb way. Do your friend
does know a lot about iguanas though?
Yeah.
If I had to wager,
your most firework adept friend, were they your smartest friend, or
that's a good point?
Kind of
or were they getting pulled over for not using a turn signal with regularity? That's a good point.
But yeah, so we all get a pretty good idea of it pretty quickly. But in the days after Oklahoma City, a daycare teacher and her students in Richardson were menaced by a man who shouted, "Here's a bomb for you, lady," and hurled a sack of cans at them. They were, I believe, at an Islamic center or some kind, or she was the teacher. It was an Islam-based attack, the can hurling. In Brooklyn, Arab shopkeepers received death threats. A lot of crazy stuff. A lot of crazy stuff going on. Little side notes of Oklahoma City is that they quickly did not come to the right conclusions,
And I'm sure CNN
and acted on those.
paid
despite,
restitution.
yeah, they made sure
To the
Ibrahim
people.
Ahmad's family was much better afterwards. No, they did not. Did you watch Arlington Road?
Not yet. It's on the list. I'll knock it out for you.
I,
Just a lot of basketball.
I did take my own advice. I watched it this weekend, and I remembered the Oklahoma City elements. I did not remember. It's not even not remember. It's as a kid, I would not have registered that they are also talking about Ruby Ridge. I don't want to spoil the movie for you, but it's in there. It's not going to be hard to figure out what I'm talking about once they come to it. So yeah, that is the thing. And I mean, I think that's kind of like the point of the podcast here is like, I think probably the first time I heard the words Ruby Ridge that I can recall was from you at some point.
Yeah.
Like, mentioning some kind of Alex Jones, just like a kind of hand wavy, Bilderberger Group, Ruby Ridge, whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. It was in probably like a Jim Mars book or something.
It's talked about a lot around the Cliven Van Bundy
That's right.
situation.
Yeah. Which I think I might have. Do you remember that night? Like, that was a situation where their comms were like online, like as it was happening. And you could actually listen to them, like talking to each other, talking to the police.
That's wild.
It was a glorious night of live tweeting, like it was a sporting event. But what year was Ruby Ridge?
You would have thought I would have put down a date in here, huh? 92 or 93.
Okay.
Might be 91. I mean, Oklahoma City was 94, right?
Yes.
And that I don't want to let this pass without noting. That's the first news event that I have like clear memory of. I remember in first grade watching the Cowboys Super Bowl parade. That would have been the first one. So I don't know if that counts as a news event. Maybe that's the first news event. But the first kind of like things are going bad and the adults have to solemnly tell you about it. My second grade class, I remember the teachers being like, a bomb just went off at the federal building in Oklahoma City. And me being like, okay.
What's a federal building? Yeah, I think it was Magic Johnson AIDS for me.
I kind of remember that. I much more clearly remember Shaq going from the Magic to the Lakers. That's an event that's burned in my memory because Daniel had a real bad bandwagon problem as a kid, and
I'm not surprised by that.
kind of liked the Lakers. Definitely liked Shaq.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was really confused by the fact that Magic played for the Lakers, but there was a team called the Magic.
Dude, I didn't realize that until I think it was when we had Jeff Pearlman on recently, and he has a book recently about, is it Three Ring Circus maybe? It's a book
Sounds
about
right.
the Kobe Shaq Lakers.
Uh-huh.
I did not recall that Magic Johnson came back to the Lakers like 3 years out of the league and came back and was like, hey, I'm a forward now. And I'm in charge of this team. And it was
like 20 games or something like that?
It was not much.
Yeah.
And it was, if I recall correctly, not something that anybody wanted except for Magic.
Yeah, because, he had AIDS.
Well, no, I think it was more that he was ineffective at that point, but that didn't help.
How would you be effective whenever you have an autoimmune disease?
Sure.
Under the impression it inhibits the peak physical performance.
Got yourself a little pamplemousse there.
Yeah.
I feel like that word's had a big 2-3 years.
No doubt.
Because I had no idea what that meant before LaCroix.
Drinking a LaCroix.
Yeah, pamplemousse.
It's delicious. So, talking about Ruby Ridge in its entirety, you can go back to the events depicted in the film, what's it called? What's the name of the Oliver Stone radio movie? This is going to be a tough episode just because I can feel like my memory is not in the mood to play along with these things.
And we have one
Talk
computer.
Radio.
Talk
just
Radio.
the name of the movie is Talk Radio.
The one where the dude at Cliff gets, spoiler,
Yeah.
murked in the station parking lot.
Yeah, and that's based on a real event. There was a radio host in Denver. His name is Alan Berg, and some neo-Nazis killed him in part because of the inflammatory nature of his content of his show, and also because he was Jewish.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the first thing that put on the radar of the FBI or whatever, that white nationalist extremists were something that we need to pay attention to. Because I believe that group, the Allen Berg group, did a number of other things. Like they committed other terror activities and just were causing problems. And it became clear that the people who surely everyone had been aware of, like that there's neo-Nazis somewhere doing white supremacy things together. Like there were parts of the West where they had like, Aryan communes, more or less. So, they would call it that, like they were giving it a go of like, we're going to be in Oregon, we're going to be in Idaho, and we're going to fucking, make our, the cleansing of the, a society based only on the white race starts here in this little camp here, and we'll just grow from there.
And if you recall, we learned from the research of one of our compatriots who was on the trip with us that Whitefish, Montana, long heralded as a bastion of these communities. And
yeah,
it wasn't me who figured this out.
It wasn't anyone white.
No. He was like, hey, you guys sure about this?
Is this safe? But yeah, so you've got these communities in Idaho, Oregon, Washington in general. I think the name proposed by the guy who was really pushing for this was to call it Cascadia, right?
Are we besmirching Cascadia like that? I thought Cascadia was chill vibes, bro. Like it was.
There's both.
Okay.
And I might be wrong. One of them might be called something else, but I'm pretty sure.
Dope flag if you've never seen it.
Yeah, no, there are like just like cool folks in the Oregon, in the Portland and Seattle area that are just like, feel strongly about the region, that have their own flag and everything. But I believe that he would use the word Cascadia, the
I did not know
white
that.
Nationalist guy that was like, they get Africa, we should have something for ourselves. And so how about the Pacific Northwest? And so as best I can understand, I don't believe that had anything to do with why Randy Weaver and his family moved from Iowa to Idaho. I think that was just, he was raised in a religious household, raised on a farm. His wife, in a way that was like misunderstood throughout most of the conflict, also had strong beliefs. Like if anything, it was more like he was kind of like, yeah, I think that America has fallen out of step with God and we need to get back on a godly path, and like, we need to listen to the Lord. Like he had his own fundamentalist beliefs, like, but kind of in a passive way. She was more the one, like, I think that there was reports that she believed that she was having visions, things like that.
We got a
And
Heaven's Gate sitch.
There was some amount of like direct communication. She had strong ideas, and there was talk. The American Experience PBS documentary on this that was recommended to me by a listener actually has extensive, like most of the documentary is just a one-on-one interview with Randy Weaver's daughter, who was in the cabin as all of this was unfolding. And maybe it was her that certainly there was reports that during like the time before the stand-up got heated, that Randy would be like, fuck it. Maybe I'll just go down to the courthouse and see if I can't settle this. And Vicky'd be like, fuck no. Like we got to force the issue here. Like this is a good versus evil situation. Yeah. Armageddon is coming for us. It starts when, fucking federal agent steps foot on this property. And so we want it. Like, don't fucking do something that averts this like cleansing conflict that we need to occur, was his wife's viewpoint. But yeah, so they moved to Idaho, moved to Ruby Ridge for, the religious kind of like live off the land, have a more isolated lifestyle, like just get away from, the bullshit that they view as turning away from God. And happened to, I'm not trying to whitewash Randy here. He was a white supremacist. Like, he did believe that, like, because there was some amount of church that was, like, wrapped up in this. Like, that there was a church group active in his area at the time that, like, tied in the final war between all peoples spoken about in Revelations and the race war were, like, kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
And, like, we're hand in hand. And so, like, that he would turn his religious beliefs into kind of like a white supremacist thing. So, like, he's it's a tough, and it kind of speaks to the way our brains work and the way that we like move through the world, that in this situation, whenever you look at the two sides, Randy Weaver and the federal government, it's very clear who the villain is. It's the federal government. Like, by the time all the facts are laid out, I hope that will be exceedingly obvious. And so then you have a tendency to be like, well, if they're the bad guys, then, like, here's the good guys. And so at every turn, I kind of, like, there is a part of me that, because I want this, like, good guy, bad guy dichotomy, is, like, sort of being like, well, let's just try and understand what Randy meant by that.
I would not traverse that world.
Yeah. No, I'm just calling that out so that if it appears that I'm being pulled by that too much, that I can be frank about like, I know those are incorrect instincts. I know that the truth is that, like, there's two bad guys here, but just whatever you think, whatever, because I mean, anytime it's the state acting with force against an individual, you imagine yourself as the individual, or I do. A lot of people do. Some people don't. That's how we end up with people on both sides of the issue in this country. So I think about, like, if they did all that to my family, and then I think, like, he's a really sympathetic figure. Then you read all this other stuff, and you're like, actually, he's kind of a bad guy. But so he's falling in with these Aryan people to some extent. They're like they have, like, big, like, jamborees and stuff. Like,
Sounds like a horrible time.
Family cookouts. Where, they're not even talking that much about the supremacy of their race. It's just mainly like, oh, how you doing? How's the trees coming in this year?
Punk music.
Yeah. And, I mean, probably not even that. I think that
It's not full
more
American History X.
Yeah, I think that they were more like family values people.
Okay.
Like they listen to Elvis or some shit. And so, at those, they would be like, we are the Aryan Brotherhood. Please, Randy, will you join us? And he's just like, that's not me, man. Like, I came out here because I wanted to be an individual. Like, because I wanted my family to be, like, on their own. So it was not to, like, be a part of a different group. It was to be off
away
from
a
other
group.
groups. Yeah, but, these are the people he socializes with. This is his network of, friends or whatever. So that all definitely is going on. And because of the Alan Berg thing, the FBI and the ATF are just buzzing around this area, this group. They want to have a handle on what's going on there. And if anything gets too far, they want to root out all these people, because the Aryan people that did the Alan Berg thing, like, started there. Like, they were a splinter group from this Aryan Brotherhood that Randy lived near. And so an informant for the ATF befriends Randy, acting like, saying, I'm an Aryan, Brotherhood guy, and sets up with Randy to purchase 2 sawed-off shotguns. And I think that this was kind of a, like, Randy was making a lot of money. Like, they were just living off the land. On the compound, it was just some cabins that they had built themselves. Had no indoor plumbing. They had a special cabin for his wife, Vicky, just where she would go during that time of the month.
All right.
To kind of
Period Island.
Work it out.
That's what we're talking about here.
She had a little period cabin.
That's just awful.
So that's the kind of things that were going on here. So that's
seems like a lot of work.
The level
Like
of poverty that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But they got the wood, they got the manpower, and so they he thinks that selling the couple of sawed-off shotguns, that's going to bring quite a bit of resources. Very Oregon Trail existence. And
Yeah.
it seems like an option in the Oregon Trail should be saw off the barrels of some shotguns, get you a little extra for it.
Might throw the period cabin in there. Once you settle down, at least the period wagon.
Do a little barter. And so he sells the 2 guns to the federal agent. They're attempting to build a case, on the higher ups and everything. And it's at one point this ATF agent gets burned by an FBI agent who wants to appear like you can trust him. Which, I would love to know how that went down in, the interagency meetings, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
I'm trying to do my job here. The same one as yours, and you're just out here telling people I work for the ATF. So at that point, he can't continue on in that down, what he had been doing. So his superior is just get out of there and charge Weaver with selling the 2 sawed-off shotguns because that's illegal. You can't saw off a shotgun. And then use the threat of the charges against him to tell him to roll on the next person up. And if he doesn't, then, fucking charge him with carry out the threat. And Weaver is adamant that he's not talking to no fucking pig. That is the thread.
Especially not the feds.
Yeah. Oh, my God, yes. Yeah, no, that's the thread running through all this. That he has a deep skepticism of any kind of government that, exists well before this. That's why he moved to Idaho from Iowa, is because he just wants free from control of any kind of authority structure. And so he's like, I'm not saying a goddamn word. And so they do charge him with having the 2 guns. He, gets, to charge him, this is another important thing. They have 2 ATF agents post up outside his property and act like a husband and wife whose car is having trouble. And then so whenever the Weaver family comes up on them, they get out to try and help them get their car started. And they're like, fucking Bill Smith, FBI, or ATF, you got to come with me. So you got a guy who already doesn't trust the federal government, where they're literally tricking him into this kind of shit. And then whenever he does get charged and everything, he gets out he's released and is given a court date. There's a whole back and forth. I have a lot of notes about the various things, but the date of his trial gets reported various different things at different times from different people. There's confusion about the date of the trial, or at least a reasonable person could be confused. He was told a couple different things a couple different times. And so whenever he doesn't show, I think it's a live question. It's to some extent, how clear it was. But I think that the biggest thing is that he interprets all of that as further proof that the government is trying to fuck him. That they're giving him an unclear date, so if he doesn't show up to the right one, that they can then be like, well, you missed your date, so fucking taking you away. So he just doesn't come down from the mountain at all. He just says, I'm going to be up there, and you guys can fuck off. Judge puts out, bench warrant saying that he's a fugitive from justice. They do give him, so there was some question about whether or not the date was, I think, February 21st or March 21st. They do give him until March 21st before they attempt any enforcement action. But then at that point, it's forwarded to the U.S. Marshal Service is the one that handles all this. And so the marshals, over the course of several months, are trying to feel out the threat level here and, to get a sense of whether or not they can take him, because they know he has guns. So their ultimate fear is that if they drive up in marshals' cars, this is why they did the whole trick with the pretending like they were stranded motorists, is because they are very concerned that if they drive up to his property, that he's just going to open fire. And this is kind of like the seed of how all of this goes, is that they just don't appear to have good intelligence on the situation. They totally miss that his wife is more aggressive than him. He's reported at one point, whenever the ATF is putting out their, this guy needs to be brought in. that he's like wanted for bank robberies, which is totally not true. The only illegal thing that it appears he has ever done is sold those sawed-off shotguns. Like, he's a weird guy who has some very aggressive anti-government beliefs, but he's not spending a lot of his time doing illegal shit. Oh, I gotta mention, that ATF agent that he sold the sawed-off shotguns to, he did at one point, like, the words left his mouth, "We should form a group to overthrow the Zionist-occupied government."
You knew it was a matter of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want to present it as like, you know, again, like there's that push-pull.
He's a racist.
Yeah, he's a racist, and he, like, gives idle talk to action.
Yeah.
Like, there's no evidence of him ever attempting to, like, form a group to overthrow the Zionist-occupied government. But, you know, he's like, thrown it out as an idea. You know what I mean? Like in the Quaker City Nighthawks song, Colorado, the woman who's always saying that she's about to move to Colorado.
Yeah.
We all know she's not moving to Colorado. We all know that Randy Weaver is not attempting to overthrow the Zionist-occupied government. I would say the government is not occupied by Zionists at all.
I appreciate you going out on that limb.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he has said stuff like that, but, you know, just, I don't know. In that county, there were people that did considerably more to, you know, attempt to be a thorn in the side of the government than this guy. And so they're doing this whole bit of trying to assess what level of threat he is, figure out how they're going to get him, because he is, you know, he's on a mountain, like, he's in a pretty good position. They do a level of surveillance that I, like, kind of wasn't even sure was possible at the time. Like, how small could cameras have been? Like, you know,
it's not like satellite imagery. It's like actual.
They might have mixed in some of that, but yeah, they had motion activated cameras set up around the property. The U.S. Marshals did, and so they had observed that every time a car would come up, that people in the family would take, like, defensive positions with arms. Because they had a number of children, 14-year-old son. I think that the 14-year-old might have been the oldest, or Sarah might have been slightly older than him, but that's around the top cluster, and then going all the way down to there was a 10-month-old, I believe, in the house. And so, yeah, the older kids would take up the defensive spots whenever anyone approached, and so, you know, I don't know that, like, it's the classic thing of I mean, this is like the crux of the case is, like, is that because, like, they're worried, or do they want to shoot someone, or do they want to not be shot themselves, so they're trying to be ready? Mm-hmm. And the government constantly interprets this as they want to shoot someone, whereas I think that there's a good amount of evidence that it's just that they don't want to be shot themselves. They, you know, I mean, fuck, dude. They just had some agents, like, hiding in their driveway, pretending to be stranded motorists. Like, who the fuck knows what they're going to do next? You know, referring to the federal government. Mm-hmm. So they've got this situation, and the marshals are trying to understand more and more what the deal is on the ground, and they ultimately send in a 6-man team, 3 of which set up, like, you know, to kind of, like, be the communications and planning or whatever. Like they split off into teams of 3 and 3, and the second team of 3 is, like, going around doing recon on the property. Like, they're snooping around armed on a private citizen's property. And they know there's several dogs on the property. They want to know how much the dogs are sensitive and how they'll react. So they throw a rock at the house. The dogs freak the fuck out. The family inside interprets it as the dogs smell game, and they haven't been able to leave their property in about 9 months. So all they're living off of is if they can shoot a squirrel. So they grab their rifles and go to try and get the squirrel.
Oh, wow.
The dogs, you know, are figuring out that it's the federal agents. I'm trying to recall exactly the situation with... So Randy is there. You got a neighbor named Kevin who has been with the family through a lot of this. and is there the full time in the siege after these events transpire. And their 14-year-old son, I believe his name is Sandy, and Sandy and Kevin are with the dog. Randy sees the agents and is kind of like, sizing them, like they're both sort of like standing there looking at each other. The dog emerges. One of the this is hard to parse because the two sides have very different narratives of the entire thing. Each side says the other shot first.
Of course.
But what Randy and Kevin say is that whenever Kevin, Sandy, and the dog emerge, the dog is being aggressive, and one of the agents shoots the dog, and then Sandy says, "You son of a bitch! You shot my dog," and takes a shot at them. And at that point, they're returning fire. So there's a firefight at that point. I think that Sandy fires the shot and then is like running to retreat. He doesn't want to just be like standing in an open field with a gun having fired. As he's running to retreat, one of the U.S. Marshals, I think I said ATF a second ago, it's U.S. Marshals. One of the Marshals agents shoots the 14-year-old. He dies.
In the back, I would imagine.
Yeah. As he's running away for cover. At that point, Kevin shoots one of the marshals and kills him. And I believe it's one of the most decorated marshals in the history of the Marshal Service. Like, he was, one of their top guys. When Randy Weaver relayed that, he gave an interview to some like right-wing podcast a couple of years ago. I believe it was at a diner in Whitefish. Or no, it was Kalispell.
Kalispell.
Yeah.
You're gonna fly in.
Because I think they lived there for a little bit after this, but he relocated to Kalispell shortly after this all went down, and I believe has lived out in Kalispell since then. I think he's still alive. So on this like right-wing podcast, I think it's just like they're in a diner like with an open recorder, and they play the audio on another podcast I listened to of Randy being like, yeah, they said it was one of their top guys, so good to get with him. Yeah, so that's Randy. So at that point they grab Sandy's body. They drag him back, put him in one of the cabins, not the cabin that they're living out of and the main siege is going out of. But
could have been the period cabin.
Could have been the period cabin. Yeah,
unoccupied.
Yeah. At that point, federal agent is dead.
Yeah. So
this is where it pops off. Like within a couple hours, it's hundreds and hundreds of agents surrounding the property. They've got like a protest area where like the neighbors are showing up and being like, you fucking stay away from them. They're good people. And like, the press is there. They're giving like, every couple hours, what the FBI guy will come out and like give a press conference.
Because a lot of this you can see a lot of this on YouTube.
Yeah. I
mean, I don't know how much of the firefight there is, but there's a ton of Ruby
no
Ridge
cameras
video
around for the firefight as far as I know. I mean, there definitely aren't because it remains so contested as to what actually happened.
True. But yeah, you can see them rolling in for sure.
But yeah, at the point, like after the shooting of the marshal, that's when it's a media event and like, we're getting constant updates and everything like that. And so on the flight out from Washington, one of the high up FBI agents, like who's kind of in charge of this whole thing, drafts the rules of engagement for everyone who's going to be involved in this. And
good. Just kind of on the fly there.
I mean, you got to kind of, like, I think that there's standards, but it's sort of like, the situation, like based on the threat level, you got to modify how much force you're willing to bring, right?
And it is a warrant.
Yeah.
It is a warrant. It's not just it's somebody who's already a fugitive.
Yes.
Not just like a investigation.
But so this is like the crucial thing. And I mean, at the point that my 14-year-old son is dead, I've got a pretty big fucking problem.
Yeah.
And I don't really, like, I don't know. I can't even really see. If it's me, I'm not stepping on the guy. Like, unless unless I'm rolling up with a lot of force, like, to take him in. Like, if that was the route that they wanted to go, it's just be like, let's end this quickly, show up with overwhelming force, bring him in. I guess I get it. But sneaking around, like, throwing rocks to, like, fuck with them and everything like that, that seems like a pretty big fucking mistake. But that's kind of like a everything's happening fast, like, who knows kind of thing. As they're drafting these rules of engagement on, like, an airplane, it's not like there's bullets flying, like the guy's sitting in fucking first class, like, with a legal pad writing out, like, what's a good idea here. And the rules of engagement they come up with, it's basically telling them, like, if you see one of them and you can see they have a gun, fucking kill them.
Yeah.
And they had known at this point that all of them always carry guns. Like, that's what the surveillance had told them that they'd been doing earlier. So they've got FBI snipers on hand, and at one point, Randy and Kevin go to check on Sammy's body after a couple days, just like make sure it's not been disturbed or anything. So they're going to cabin. I believe before they get there, Sniper takes a shot. He's trying to get Randy in the spine, I believe, but moves at the last second. It hits Randy, but, like, it's not a serious injury. At that point, Randy is running back to the main cabin, and I think he's taking aim at Kevin at that point. The sniper shoots Kevin. The bullet goes through Kevin because, high-powered sniper rifle. Kills Vicky Weaver with the 10-month-old in her hands.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. Who, was not armed.
No. And it did hit Kevin. So then Kevin and Randy are in the cabin with the kids. Vicky's dead. But so it went through Kevin and it went through a door.
Jesus Christ.
So they don't know that Vicky's dead. So as they, like, continue with their, like, propaganda stuff of, like, I don't believe that there was a phone in the house. Surely if there's no running water.
Yeah, I was going to say priority-wise.
Not telephones. So they're just, like, going at them with bullhorns and shit, just, like, using as loud of things as they can to get to the cabin and, like, deliver a message. And because they've misread the situation and just assumed that Randy is the aggressor, they think that the voice of reason they can appeal to is Vicky. So all of these bullhorn messages are like, Vicky, come out. This is like, we can make this work. Like, think of your children. And, like, as they're saying this, like, they can see fucking Vicky's body that's been blown apart, like, sitting over there. And so they interpret it as, like, Jesus Christ, they're fucking with us in a cruel way. It's somewhat a testament to, like, how much we ought to respect the difficulty of communication and the different understandings that exist between two peoples. Like, just getting everything right is just so hard. Like,
especially in a situation
you're just
like
making
this.
So many assumptions. Like, we all rely on, in every second of our lives, on filling in information gaps that we don't have. And whenever we do so too confidently and trust ourselves too much and be like, every time I fill in, I'm fucking right about that, it just creates a lot of problems. And so, they're definitely feeling taunted. Ultimately, that doesn't have any more effects. No one else dies. This is the end of the death count. The federal marshal, the 14-year-old son, and the wife. Kevin eventually just, like, is doing bad, he's been shot.
Yeah.
He's bleeding out. There's no, like, food or medical attention in the cabin. He thinks he's going to die soon, so he's kind of like, yeah, I gotta go. There's also, like, some kind of crazy, like, right-wing figure that they, like, have, like, I think it's like launching, like, a third-party presidential bid.
It's like 1992 Baked Alaska.
Yeah.
Just kind of capitalizing on the scene. And
so, like, the feds attempt with some amount of success to, like, use him to be like, hey, they'll listen to you. Like, go down there and tell them.
Bake would never.
It's okay. Baked absolutely would.
Yeah, he would. And especially since, just as we were talking about last week, I don't know. the head guy in charge of the largest right-wing, white supremacist militia right now is a 10-year criminal informant.
Yeah.
It's not entirely off the board.
Another thing, they find out, I believe from one of the neighbors, that the one piece of technology they do have in the cabin is they have a radio. And they find out that
It's the wave of the future, I hear.
they're hardcore dedicated listeners to the Paul Harvey show, and now you know the rest of the story. Guy.
Oh, you don't got to tell me, bro. I had a long dalliance with Paul Harvey when I was a kid, man. My stepdad was really, really into him, and I loved that show.
And so there is a Paul Harvey episode that you can find the audio of this. I probably should have come with it. Of Paul being like...
He's appealing to them?
Randy, I understand you're a listener.
That's incredible.
And I want to let you know right now, if you come out, no one else will be hurt.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that if you saw in a movie, you would be like, this would never happen.
Yeah, no, it fucking happened. They got it nationwide telecast to just be sending a message to one fucking dude in a cabin.
That's incredible.
Yeah. But yeah, so, eventually they do say that, we'll give up the guns, we'll come out. They are immediately taken into custody, as you might imagine.
What sort of time are we looking at here?
Well, so they're put on trial. Kevin's put on trial for the shooting of the marshal. And Randy's put on trial for... a whole host of things. I think that they have him in for the shooting of the marshal. They've got him on the gun charges. They've got him on the failure to appear. And then I think that they tack on all kinds of, conspiracy or whatever. They go to trial and, present their side. The federal agents appear and, tell their story of, we came out and Kevin started shooting at us. He hit the one guy and we were just returning fire and... oops, I guess we killed a 14-year-old. And Kevin and Randy both tell the story that, the federal agent opened fire on the dog. This kid said, "You shot my dog, you son of a bitch." And then fucking, that's how it started. The jury listens to all that, and they acquit.
That's incredible.
They say that if you're fucking showing up, sneaking onto someone's property and shooting their dog, you're just kind of asking for it after that. We do have that's what it means whenever you buy a piece of fucking property.
Okay,
you
but
get some amount of protection from this sort of thing.
You do, but and I don't know the specifics of this case, jury makeup, the site. But,
there were other people in Idaho. I want to say it was in Boise or something.
But that is, and I know this from watching 6.5 because I believe they halved one of the seasons of The Shield. Mm-hmm. That is not an uncommon warrant serving move. Now it should be illegal, but a lot of times if you're serving a warrant, I would imagine that the people that you're serving are possibly dangerous and possibly armed. And I don't think the throw a rock thing is. I don't think that's without precedent. And I would wonder, I don't wonder, I think I know, if you have drug dealer guy, and maybe that should factor into it, although from a legal standpoint, it probably shouldn't, who is having a warrant served on him, and you throw a rock at his house, and when he comes outside and he's armed, and a law enforcement agent ends up dead, that dude is not getting acquitted. So I would be interested if the fact that this happened in a place that has its own bent of independence from all the man, and especially the federal man, played massively in his favor.
Yeah. And
I would think so, because yes, you're right. You purchase a piece of property, but also you have a warrant out for your arrest. You've skipped trial at least once, if not twice. And,
I think the jury, I would assume that they know also these people, these same, group shot his wife a couple days later.
Yeah, that's true too.
There's some amount of, you just look at the full scope of the situation. Kind of what the OJ jury did, which, I would not say is a great model for jurying.
No.
But you are a person.
We're trying to balance the ledger for what this
and
agency's done.
Yeah, they just fucking killed his wife and kid. Like, do we want to pile more on? No, we don't at all.
That's wild. I did not know whenever I was throwing this around like it was in my, to quote the Musers, my bingo card for a couple years, that he was completely acquitted. But it is kind of weird.
So the neighbor got off entirely. Randy, all the charges he stood on.
Wow, the neighbor?
The one that shot the marshal.
That's incredible.
Yeah. They were like, that's self-defense.
Homeowner, but...
I mean, I think he's acting as the homeowner or whatever. Like they just were like, this whole situation starts when the marshals are traipsing around the property. I guess they were buying that the marshals shot first. And so, if you have marshals walking onto your property and shooting guns and like one of them gets killed in the firefight that ensues that they started, like they're not sending Kevin to jail for that. Randy, they acquitted him on the initial gun charges, even but did convict on the failure to appear, and then counted that as time served. Like, just he had been in jail awaiting trial.
Okay.
And so whenever the trial's done, he's pretty much done with everything.
Is there a good movie about this?
I don't know if there's a good movie about this, but Laura Dern does star as Vicky Weaver with Randy Quaid as Randy Weaver.
Randy Quaid is the only option for this.
And is unfortunately made for TV film. I think it was a mini-series, but then like turned into like I don't know if it was theatrical release, certainly home video. So I have not watched that yet, but I'd like to.
Yeah, I'm not going to put it above the OKC movie, but dude, what's weird too is like if you think about this, so this definitely was before Waco, right?
Yes.
Weird bent of the 90s of just, and I guess it's possible you could just linearly track it and say that it's nothing compared to now whenever we had people like actually storming the federal building. But a lot of 90s conflict based on, F the Fed. And I don't know if that was like, because at this point, like, it's not even like Bill Clinton is president, I don't think, right?
I mean, he was for Waco, but he's not for this.
Right.
Yeah.
So between Oklahoma City, this, and Waco, and then it kind of feels like it went away for a while.
Yeah.
Now, white supremacist and white supremacist-based terrorism, I mean, we've all seen the graphs in the last, like, month or two. It's shocking. At least it's shocking based on if you did, like, a content analysis of news coverage on these things. But I don't know. That's a weird moment in time that I guess I've never really considered, that we just had this whole, like, you're not coming to get me thing for, like, a 5-6 year window there.
Yeah, and I mean...
Because I don't... what I guess really, basically, is for whatever reason, 9/11, it felt like that
wiped this
forced
off
a recession
the
of...
Yeah. At that point, the only thing was, Arab terrorism. But, so a lot of what you're talking about is this. The existence of, like, militia groups explodes after Ruby Ridge.
Really?
Because, it like...
So they got what they wanted, or what she wanted.
Randy Weaver had, more or less. Yeah, like her basic theory of the case, like the angels didn't come down like she was saying. But like he was the kind of person who was constantly in fear that agents were going to come onto his property and kill his family. And then they fucking did. So before that they did, he looks like a crazy guy. This is a good enough allegory for the situation, right? Of like any person who says like, I think the feds are out to get me. You're like, yeah, dude, sure they are. Fucking boogeyman's under your bed too.
Yeah.
And then it happens.
Head back to Denton.
And it's fucking a large explosion in other, like now every other person who kind of had that thought in their head, them and everyone around them is like, yeah, it did happen, so it's probably a matter of time.
But slight counterpoint to that, though, like even though it did happen, it was almost, at least in part, fomented by his own actions and their own actions.
I mean,
so like, yeah,
it's
your
the
concern is
barest of
there,
actions.
Yeah, but I mean, you're doing
a
illegal
minor
arms
charge that's like a pretty fucking like ultimately a charge he was ultimately acquitted on.
That's true.
And then you're like, the federal government has largely acknowledged that they were wrong about this. There was a Senate subcommittee. There was a Department of Justice investigation. Both of them were like, you guys fucked up pretty bad. And the way that they've conducted themselves ever since. There was a gentleman in our area. I think that the place he was going out to is somewhere around Greenville, like the town, not the street. That injured a sheriff's officer and had an outstanding warrant. And so he holed up and was like, you can fucking come and get me. And they waited him out like 20 years and then dropped the charges.
Wow.
And just he never left his property during that time. And they were like, yeah, guess that's good enough.
And he didn't even have to pay an exorbitant rate to Richie Witt to
That's right.
to have that level of seclusion from the authorities he so disdained.
Yeah, he was not involved in Trident Lakes, although you imagine that he would have been interested in the pitch.
Yeah, he's at least in the target demo.
But yeah, that became much more common as a way, they're going to have this problem of people who don't want to come in for warrants and are in isolated areas where they're well armed. And their response since has been, if you're not going to leave your house, then...
But you probably have to fold Waco into that, right? Like that,
yes.
You had a couple of events like that both just... And I wonder, too, just how much the proliferation of, because this all is like kind of happening right around cable news. And so a lot in the same way that people talk about Vietnam and how that changed, whether it was the draft because it was happening on TV or the way that we fight now... I don't know that if this happens in the 70s that it plays out the same way. Because now it's like, man, people saw what we did. Like people saw all that and they were tuned in every night.
And like you said, that there was good coverage of it.
Yeah.
And so, dude, in the American Experience one, they show the FBI press conference where they announce that they've killed Vicky. Like that's a fucking wild moment. Like. The crowd is just like the guy is trying to kind of like deliver the news as best he can. He's like, so we did have an engagement and Randy was shot and Vicky was killed. And everyone's like,
total accident though, bro.
And then just like yelling.
The bullet went through another person.
It did.
Come on.
It did. So, another thing to add in, Unabomber, just on your list of Oklahoma City, Unabomber certainly slots in there. And with all of those, the Unabomber has like often been someone that we've put in this group, but I'm starting a series on the podcast called Right Size, Wrong Shape. That's a Hawk Harrelsonism. If you hit the ball hard, but there was a fielder standing there, he would say right size, wrong shape. Unabomber had some interesting points about the problems. Bad solution. Right size, wrong shape.
What was Adam's hashtag so many years ago?
Which one?
I think it was after Silicon Valley's Rigby. But it was I don't remember. I haven't corresponded with him in a long time, but it was something like the Unabomber was bad, but
Yeah.
To an extent, the Q's involve into this. That's an old Chapoism, but
and I look at this and this is what Timothy McVeigh was talking about and Waco, and I would say Timothy McVeigh, welcome to Right Size, Wrong Shape.
That's I will disassociate from this assessment. I will disassociate.
Wrong shape is the part that we should focus on.
I think so. Yeah. And the Q thing is really more just that, and we're painting with some broad brushes here, but just the idea that I think we've talked about this enough on the podcast to where it's pretty obvious to me that whether it's, Bill Clinton or Donald Trump, it doesn't really matter. There is a thing that appears to happen, or Prince Andrew, where people who are in the very, 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 very elite upper crust of just all of global society, they do seem to do some...
They play by their own rules.
They play by some different rules that tend to manifest themselves in
Which of those rules
sex.
they're bending? Yeah.
Now, that seems obvious. And as fascinating as the Epstein story was, how poorly what basically ended up being half the Republican Party mangled that story, which had, a lot of that stuff had been out there for a long time. It was not new information that they discovered. I mean, the Miami Herald article.
I don't even really know what information they're working
old.
off of, dude. I don't know that Epstein's like I think you're marinating it in more reality than they might be. But I'm not saying you're totally off. Should there be American military bases in the holiest land of the Muslim religion? I think that there probably shouldn't be. 9/11, right size, wrong shape.
Oh, dude, bad idea. Absolute bad idea. Absolute
have
bad
the military
idea.
bases.
No, you saying that.
Oh.
That might have to go.
No, leaving it in.
No.
Wrong shape.
Look, I mean, it's complicated, but not right size either. Wrong size, wrong shape.
Well, that's how you feel. There was a memo from a deputy director of the FBI. I think that this came out at the trial and was certainly helpful. Where he wrote on the memo something to consider, and then a series of 4 bullet points. 1, charge against Weaver is bullshit. 2, no one saw Weaver do any shooting. Like in reference to the neighbor that shot the agent, because they don't approach it as like they just have a very monolithic, Randy, you need to come out, like you need to stop this. It really is like the entire family is in this compound. They're together as one unit. Like they just have a unit. They're acting, like it's the kids taking up defensive positions. It's this neighbor shooting the marshal. Like that's just another way that they get it wrong. They think of it as like a Randy thing. It's like you're dealing with this whole fucking mountain community, bro. But yeah, so no one has seen Randy do any shooting. Vicky has no charges against her. Weaver's defense: he ran down the hill to see what his dog was barking at. Some guys in camouflage shot his dog, started shooting at him, killed his son. Harris did the shooting. He is in a pretty strong legal position. That is what an FBI deputy director writes while the siege is going on.
Yeah, I mean, that checks out.
Yeah.
I wonder, it's probably pretty unlikely that they were able to properly identify themselves.
And I think that, I don't know that he was writing that specifically about the rules of engagement, but there were like snipers and personnel working that upon receiving those rules of engagement were like, are you sure about this?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that this fits with what I was trained on, what I'm allowed to do.
Yeah.
Like, the normal rules of engagement are, like, if you think that you are going to die or that an innocent person is going to die, you can act to prevent that. That's it. This idea of, well, if you see they're armed, then fucking open season. And so that's the big thing that the change in the federal government going forward is the Department of Justice investigation and the Senate investigation both found that they violated the constitutionality rules around rules of engagement kind of stuff. Like the we are, as American citizens, promised more than if you have a gun on you, we can shoot to kill.
On your property.
Yeah. Arlen Specter was the
blast from the past
senator that was in charge of that committee. He was Republican, so he's the one in charge. The ranking member from the Democrats looked at this entire business about. Let me read my note here. So the Department of Justice found that the second shot, like the first shot at Randy, the one where he moved. I think that they were like somewhat all right with that. But the second shot was found to be did not satisfy the legal standards for deadly force. The Arlen Specter Senate report agreed with the Department of Justice's findings. The ranking member for the Democrats dissented from agreeing that second shot did not satisfy the legal grounds. She said that, in fact, it was fine. That's Dianne Feinstein.
Okay, well, they're going to come for some of our faves, as you heard a couple years ago, related to Epstein.
Because most of the stuff that is about her now is that she's walking around and doesn't know where she is, and true enough, I'm disturbed by those reports. But also, there's a ton of stuff where she's a piece of shit. So Dianne Feinstein, fuck you.
Jeez.
So at the point, once Randy's trial is done, he said, in fact, we're not done in court. We will be suing the federal government for the wrongful death of his wife and son.
And dog.
He sues for $200 million. They settle out of court. Randy receives $300,000, and each of his 3 surviving children get $1 million apiece.
Okay.
And at the time that settlement is announced, an anonymous source with the Department of Justice talks to the Washington Post and says, "We were extremely relieved. We're pretty sure they could have gotten the 200 if they pushed for it."
200?
They killed his wife and son, dude.
People get a lot less.
I wouldn't accept
a lot
200 million
more.
for that.
Boy, that's a...
You want to hear the terms of the offer?
Well, let me say this, too. As part of me hearing the terms of the offer, I might also be willing to offer myself up for them to get it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we
There you
go best out of 3 Rochambeau here or what, but I'm certainly not worth that to them.
Yeah.
That's an overpay. Based on old analytics.
It's worth noting that as much as the federal agents misunderstood everything that was going on here, the press did a terrible job. The press were very much putting pressure on the agencies of like, you said you have a warrant for this guy, go get him. Like in the months where this was cold, like before they killed the marshal, or before the marshal died, whatever. There was a lot of like, thought we had laws here. He sold shotguns. You got to go get him.
Yeah.
And like you guys, over here with your dick in your hand. And then just, they were fully going along with the misunderstanding of Randy as being the one driving this and everything else. And I don't know, just not a fun day for them if you look back on the things written.
Yeah, and look, I don't claim to be any sort of any better than a lot of people who fill those roles. But there is something to a lot of the people who end up covering these stories. They're not really prepared to do so.
Like certainly whenever they occur in Idaho.
They're very okay, but even whenever you get CNN involved.
Yeah.
They're very prepared to do a stand-up and possibly at some point had to work on a copy desk or edit video and do some grunt work to get where they are. But as far as understanding nuance of different political and societal factors that produce something as tragic as this, they don't know. They don't know. And this is how you end up with Brian Williams being on television. I think it was the Libya. That's the one that always stuck out to me. He's like literally reading, like he's doing like Warren Zevon lyrics or some shit. Like as we're showing images of an American military advance that is seemingly pretty indiscriminate. And he's providing no context as to how this is happening. And look, we've seen this a million times in every single war, and it's not unique to America. But you end up with commentators or presenters, as they may call them elsewhere. They don't know what they're talking about. They know how to basically carry the line that is allowed to be carried because they're commercial entities.
Yeah, I would just say the putting pressure stuff is like that's not just like reading back the line that was fed to you. That's kind of acting on your own to be like, I'm gonna try to set the agenda of the
that's
forces
true
here.
But you almost certainly feel like.
But there was also plenty of what you're talking about was going on.
Yeah, and I guess it's
especially once the thing's set up, like once the press area is set up near the family compound.
Yeah.
Like then it's a lot of just repeating whatever the FBI says.
Yeah.
And the FBI they just misunderstood the situation from start to finish. They really did.
It's a pretty serious misunderstanding.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It definitely had me do some thinking about, just, I don't know exactly how to apply this. In fact, I'll probably never need to apply this in my life, but just whatever you read about the guy, if you asked him his racial views, they were bad. But I don't think that they were top of mind for him. Like, and this isn't a way of, like, saying that he... Like, I've said a million times, he's a piece of shit. I'm not attempting to, like, this isn't rehabbing him. This is being interested in people and the way we talk about these things. That I just think that 90% of his brain was occupied with this, like, God is coming back kind of stuff. You know, and like he did subsume his racial views into that framework, but like, I don't think that he cared. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he gave a shit about the fact that, like, there were people of other races. He probably didn't encounter them often in Idaho. Yeah. And, like, yeah, if he's saying the kind of things he's saying, he's not going to treat them well. And, like, we cannot have a society where we tolerate, you know, that kind of thing. But, like, it's just interesting. Like, whenever you learn that someone has those racial views, I think that it is your instinct to be like, that is a defiant. Like, if someone then asks you, like, you know, what's this guy like? You'd be like, well, he's a fucking racist. And like, I don't think that his self-identity was like racist first, you know? Like, I think that he was focused on the Armageddon stuff.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, just if you have like racial views that are too far outside of the mainstream, then like you are going to be defined by those. But it is possible that like you don't really care, you know, like there's plenty of political issues out there that like I have a stance, but I don't think about it. I don't read articles about it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, but that's also somewhat conflating, like, oh, I don't really know much about like this pipeline with I don't believe people should be treated the same based on, you know, their ethnicity. I'm like, I get what you're saying, but I also think that it's a pretty easy one to just decide whether or not you believe that people should be treated the same and possibly even recognize the history that they've been subjected to. That one feels like one you don't have to do a ton of
I mean, my
research on to care about or to not care about, I guess, would be more specifically.
My big point here is that you should not have your wife and son killed on the basis of those beliefs. So, like, that's an easy one, you know? Like, I'm not breaking new ground there. But I guess, you know, I'm wondering, like, to what does that extend, you know? Like, because like I said, you can't tolerate it. Like, I'm not... I would allow someone like that to be in my life. I would want to do something to, you know, whatever. Yeah. But...
I think as we...
Like, should they be allowed to live on a compound by themselves in Idaho in peace with those views? I think I'm okay with that. Like,
yeah, I know, yeah.
I don't want to, like, what's the other idea? Round them up and,
yeah.
You know, like...
No, I hear you. I think my final thing is just, I'm a little bit amazed that the woman who was seemingly kind of like the mastermind or at least like the motivating force behind this was willing to go to that other cabin. Like, I would have thought she'd just make him go for 5 days. Like, that's a really sharing relationship of who has to eat the responsibility here for this or that. Like, he kind of seems like a putz. It worked out
better for her. I don't know how.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe that's how she was able and willing to agree to do it, because that feels like they both kind of got there. Here, you got that one. I got you involved in a federal case that's probably going to get some people killed. Yeah, but
it's just going to be an easier cleanup if it's a smaller space.
Why would it need to
the
be
whole cabin?
Doing it over?
If it's just the whole cabin sprayed with it, then that's going to be a bitch for anyone who's got to clean that up. Kind of keeping it to a smaller area just seems like a good plan of attack.
Really, really gross. Wrong plan, wrong size, whatever you had earlier. I don't like any of it.
I think right size, wrong shape can be a series that we could talk about throughout the rest of the podcast history. If you want to bring in a right size, wrong shape, you're welcome to do so.
Okay.
It's right up there with back on his bullshit.
Firing Mike Nolan and hiring Dan Quinn.
Technology in sports.
Technology in sports.
That was one of your
that had an
segments.
Open. Yeah. Once upon a time. All right, good times.
That's it for tonight. The high school special is next, so until tomorrow. For everyone who's been a part of this one,
I'm TC and Jake.
We do thank you for watching. Good night.